Okay, so we had callbacks, but from ES6 and onward, we got promises. Now, promises were, well, promised a lot. They made our asynchronous code a lot easier, but of course, you need to understand the promise behavior itself. A promise is a JavaScript object that links a piece of executing code to a piece of consuming code. So the executing code takes the time that it needs to finish its iteration of whatever it's doing, and then the result of that code is provided to the actual consuming code. Now, when you create a promise, the executing code is actually automatically started. So every promise has a resolve function and a reject function. When the execute code is done, if you made a promise yourself, you're going to call either one of those two functions. You're going to call resolve or you're going to call reject. As you might understand, that resolve you execute when the code is done and completed. Reject you call when you are throwing an error. Now, a promise has two internal properties. It has state and it has result. The state contains the status of the promise, which could have three values. Pending, which is when you start it and the code is running. Fulfilled is when you call the resolve action. And rejected, of course, is when you call the rejected action. The result actually contains the result of the executing code, be it a value that you're passing along from resolve or an error that you're passing on from reject. And it is undefined until you call one of those. Now, one very important thing to note on promises is that everything is final. Your state, once you change it to fulfilled or rejected, one of those two, you cannot change it back anymore. So say you have three values you want to pass along from the promise. Once you call the resolve function with one value, it's done. Those other ones are not coming through. Now let's take a look on how promises work with one of those consumer methods, because of course I've only been talking about the executing code. Now, how are we going to catch those? Now, in the last video, we saw callback functions. We executed a callback function when the code was done. But now we have multiple ways of catching this. We can listen to the success. We can listen to the error. We can do multiple things. So you have three consumer methods that actually can use a promise, which is then, catch, and finally. Now let's dive into an example where we make the promise and actually catch it with those consumer methods.